I'll confess that even though I'm no Peyton Manning fan, it's been really sad to see what he's been in 2015. He's been bad. And even though the sports media doesn't want to come right out and say it, they get to that point, but it's like Goodell is off camera telling him, don't you say it, don't you say it. The simple fact of the matter is Peyton Manning has largely sucked in 2015, and all of us know it damn good and well. It's the truth. Yet, in spite of Peyton Manning, in spite of him, not because of him, which sounds odd enough to say in the regular season for any Peyton Manning-led team, the Denver Broncos, in spite of him, have found a way to piece together a really good season. And here they sit, 8-2, leading the AFC West by 3 games, in a position where they could potentially get a first-round bye in the AFC playoffs, get at least one home playoff game. And, based off of the strength of that defense, that unit that is really, really good, one of the NFL's best, and when they're healthy and playing right, can be as good as anybody, if not better than everybody. And a running game that is starting to improve, an offensive line that's slowly starting to improve, with some good weapons in the passing game. This is a Broncos team to not take too lightly. This is a Broncos team that finds themselves in a situation where they could potentially contend for the Super Bowl this year, which is the whole philosophy of the way this team was built. But now we get to the point where Peyton Manning missed this past Sunday's game against the Bears due to his myriad of injuries, even though I still am convinced ultimately it was just because of the fact that Kubiak got tired of this guy trying to sit there and assert his dominance over the team and saying, this is Peyton's place, and trying to sit there and run things Peyton's way, and knowing at the end of the day they were never going to get anywhere running it Peyton's way. Now we've seen Brock Osweiler, the future of the Denver Broncos perhaps, get his opportunity. And you know what? He did okay. I watched him Sunday against the Bears. I thought he was solid. Was he spectacular? No. But based off of the Denver Broncos and the team that they are and the way they're constructed and how they can win in 2015, they don't need spectacular out of the quarterback position. So we've reached this point in time now where you're going to see the national media over the next few weeks, until something breaks one way or another, they're going to try and trot out there this whole kind of faux-up quarterback controversy of when Peyton Manning's healthy, do they go back to Peyton Manning? He's the man. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's one of the all-time greats. You have to go back to him, right? But then here's Brock Osweiler, and he's not playing bad, and he's got to be the future. And at some point in time, the Denver Broncos need to find out what, if any, type of future that Brock Osweiler has as a quarterback of the Denver Broncos, and they got to go with him. And this whole notion of, just because you got injured doesn't mean that when you come back, you automatically get your job back. And sometimes that's just the way it is. And the way I look at it is very simple. The Denver Broncos have to keep starting Brock Osweiler, period. And there's a few reasons for this. Number one, I've used this logic in the past when trying to figure out whether the veteran quarterback should play or the younger quarterback or rookie quarterback should play. And one of the major arguments I always make that I think is appropriate is if you've reached the point in time where the veteran quarterback and the rookie quarterback are on a similar level, or the younger quarterback compared to the veteran are on the similar level or the same level, you always go with the younger player because naturally there is more potential there for growth and improvement. There is more upside potentially there. So if they're already playing here and they haven't even started in the NFL or they barely started in the NFL, as is the case with Brock Osweiler, whereas opposed to Peyton Manning is the veteran, and he's pretty much on this level too, if not slightly below, he's not going to get any better. And no matter how much anybody wants to spin it, what we've seen out of Peyton Manning in 2015 is who Peyton Manning is today. There's not going to be some magical cure that fixes his ridiculous decision-making. There's not going to be some magical cure that changes him from being Peyton Pennington. It's just not happening. That limp noodle that he has for an arm is going to stay that way. He's not getting any better. Whereas Brock Osweiler here, the more experience and playing time and real-life situations he experiences could get better and better and better. So I don't think it's crazy at all to expect that at some point in time in 2015, if you continued to stick with Brock Osweiler, he would play at a higher level than Peyton Manning could possibly provide you at any point in time during this 2015 season. It's a similar argument I made last year about the ridiculousness of the Vikings starting Matt Castle over Teddy Bridgewater, or especially the Jacksonville Jaguars starting Chad Henne over Blake Bortles. When they're the same, you go with the young guy, period. It's like this year with the Cleveland Browns. You were 2-7 with Josh McCown. You've got to sit there and find out what you've got in Johnny Football, because it can't really be any different. You're losing a bunch of games anyways. Well, when you look at the Broncos, they're winning games in spite of the quarterback anyways, and in large part the reason they were winning in spite of their quarterback at Peyton Manning was he kept putting them in bad situations. He kept turning the damn ball over. And if for no other reason than the fact that you could be more conservative on offense and Brock Osweiler will turn the ball over less, the Denver Broncos offense instantly becomes more productive, and the Denver Broncos as a whole become a scarier team to have to deal with because they're not giving it away to you 3 or 4 times a fucking game. And then I also look at the fact of you bring in Kubiak to run Kubiak's system and Kubiak's offense. Peyton Manning, instead of being somebody who needed to understand his current plight in his current situation, still wants to make it about him. It still wants to be about him. And he's not going to adapt. He's not going to adjust. In fact, I believe early on in the season, he was intentionally sabotaging things, my opinion, because of an ego standpoint. He didn't want to admit that Kubiak knew better than him at this stage of his career. And at the end of the day, sports is so much about ego as much as it is anything else. Peyton's got an ego and Kubiak's got an ego. Well, at the end of the day, Kubiak is supposed to be the warden. He's the guy. He's the head coach. And it needs to be his system. And you can run his system a lot more effectively and a lot more comfortably with Brock Osweiler than you do Peyton Manning. Brock Osweiler is younger and definitely much more athletic at this stage of his career. He definitely has a stronger arm than Peyton Manning has today. With having a Brock Osweiler, you get out of some of the trends and patterns of wanting to rely on Peyton too much and having Peyton have too much of the control. Now you've got it where the head coach and the play caller can be a little bit more involved in the game plan, and as a result, you keep things closer to the vest. Osweiler allows you to run that Kubiak system more than Peyton Manning does. And based off of the reality of the Denver Broncos and who they are as a team and what their strengths are and what they could potentially be this year and where they could potentially go, Peyton Manning just isn't a fit, and Brock Osweiler is. And then we also look at this from a future standpoint as well. You know, Peyton Manning, even if for some unknown reason wanted to play in 2016, and most certainly you wouldn't think is going to come with the Denver Broncos. So at some point in time, this team, with Brock Osweiler being ready to be a free agent at the end of this season, they need to know what they've got in this guy. Sitting him on the bench for 4 full seasons while you watch Peyton Manning and all of his egotistical glory isn't going to get the job done. It's going to leave you with a lot of uncertainty, and it's going to leave you with an unsure future with this organization. They have to find out. And at this point in time, the Denver Broncos are going to lose no more games with Brock Osweiler than they would have with Peyton Manning as a starting quarterback. And if anything, because of how it could change their approach and the things that Brock Osweiler could do that Peyton Manning cannot at this point in time, I argue that the Denver Broncos can win more with Brock Osweiler than with Peyton Manning. And you could argue in some ways that it would be because of, in part, Brock Osweiler and his superior fit into Kubiak's system and the fact that Kubiak's system would actually be allowed to run and work. They will commit more to the running game behind Hillman and C.J. Anderson. You would think that they would run more play actions. They would run more bootlegs. They would run more under the center. They would utilize more of the one-cut zone blocking scheme that you can't utilize based off of Peyton always running in the damn shotgun. Yeah, the fact of the matter is that if the Denver Broncos are sitting there, and even if they lose to the New England Patriots on Sunday night, even if they lose to them, they can't overreact and they can't panic. Because long term, no matter how much some of the media is still going to try and create this narrative of there being a quarterback controversy, even though I see some ridiculousness. I saw one article talking about how the Broncos need Peyton Manning in order to win the Super Bowl. No, the fuck they don't. They've had a far superior Peyton the past 3 years, and they didn't get the fucking job done. And in fact, 2 of those 3 years, they were one and done. And then when they finally did get to the Super Bowl in a weak-ass year for the AFC, they got their shit pushed in by the Seattle Seahawks. In no way, shape, or form does this Denver Broncos team have to start Peyton Manning. And in fact, they shouldn't start Peyton Manning. The only reason that Peyton Manning should see the field again in 2015 for this Denver Broncos team is if Brock Osweiler gets hurt, period. The time is now. The future is now. This organization needs to find out what they've got in Brock Osweiler because they know what they've got in Peyton Manning, and based off of what we've seen this year, it's not very good. And as long as they continue to kowtow to Peyton Manning and his ego and his way of doing things, this Denver Broncos team will be one and done again in the fucking playoffs, and it'll be the same old crap. You don't want to do the same old crap. A definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and then being surprised when the results are always the same and you don't like them, yet you continue to do the same thing over and over again. Why would you go back to Peyton Manning? If you're the Broncos organization, if you're the Broncos coaching staff, you've seen the possibilities that could come with Brock Osweiler being the starter. And you also know the eventualities of Peyton Manning continuing to be your starter. Brock Osweiler's got to be the guy at this point in time. There is not a single good logical argument left as to why Peyton Manning should suit up by choice as the starting quarterback again for the Denver Broncos in 2015. Brock Osweiler is better for this team both in the here and now and especially for the future. And that's where the priorities need to be. Not sitting there and appeasing the ego of almost a 40-year-old quarterback whose glory days are clearly behind him.